Hi there. Tonight you slip quietly into the muddy, candle-lit world of a medieval village, where you're a young woman standing on the edge of the most daunting night of your life. Your wedding night. Picture yourself inside a cramped, thatch-roofed cottage. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool and smoky tallow candles. Shadows stretch long across the uneven walls. Outside, the village hums with chatter and clinking mugs. And you can't shake the feeling that every laugh is somehow about you. Your stomach churns as you adjust your scratchy linen shift, your best garment, though it's patched at the elbows. This isn't the fairy tale wedding of modern dreams. No silk, no music swelling as you walk down an aisle. You probably won't survive this night without a few awkward moments that will haunt you for years to come. So, before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love knowing where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. Let's ease together into this story. You're standing in the heart of your village, a cluster of wattle and daub cottages huddled along a rutted dirt path. It's late spring. The air carries the faint sweetness of blooming hawthorn, undercut by the ever-present stench of the midden heap nearby. Your wedding is tomorrow, and the village already buzzes like a hive of slightly drunk bees. As you haul a bucket of water from the well, you catch snippets of gossip. "She's marrying the miller's son, lucky girl," one woman mutters. "Lucky?" another snorts. "He's got a temper and a wandering eye." You try to ignore them, but their words cling like damp straw to your skirt. This isn't a private affair. Your wedding night is the village's entertainment, and you're the unwitting star. Marriage in this time isn't about love. It's about survival, alliances, land, and labor. Historians note that by the 13th century, the Catholic Church had tightened its grip on matrimony, declaring it a sacred sacrament. That means your wedding isn't just a party. It's a contract. You're not marrying for a sparkly ring or a Pinterest board. You're tying your family's fortunes to another's, and everyone's watching to see if you'll fumble the knot. A quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed a bride who tripped on her way to the church was cursed with bad luck. So you're hyper-aware of every pebble underfoot. Historians still argue whether that superstition was widespread or just local folklore. But you're not taking chances. You pause by the well, the wooden bucket heavy in your hands, and glance at your reflection in the water. Your face is flushed from a day of chores, milking the cow, kneading dough, dodging your mother's endless advice about wifely duties. The village is small, maybe 200 souls, and privacy is a fantasy. You share your cottage with your parents, 2 siblings, and a particularly grumpy goat who occasionally chews your straw mattress. The idea of intimacy tonight feels like a cruel joke. From outside you hear a gaggle of older women cackling about the bedding ceremony, a real thing, and as intrusive as it sounds. They'll escort you to the marriage bed and you're already dreading their jokes. Let's be honest, you're exhausted. You've been up since dawn and the sun's barely set. Your hands are rough from spinning wool, your back aching from hauling firewood. Yet the village expects you to be radiant, ready for a night that's more duty than desire. You smirk, thinking how modern folks would lose it if their wedding included a public inspection of the bed sheets. Spoiler, that's coming. And it's not as romantic as it sounds. For now you trudge back to the cottage, water sloshing in the bucket, trying to tune out the gossip. The villagers are already betting on whether you'll cry tomorrow or manage a brave face. Inside, your mother's fussing, piling on last-minute tasks, muttering about a dowry of chickens, coarse cloth, and a wobbly stool your father carved. You're not nobility. This isn't a Game of Thrones-style union with golden knights. You're a peasant, and your marriage is a practical deal to keep the village's web of obligations intact. Still, there's a flicker of something beneath the nerves. Maybe hope, maybe defiance. Maybe, just maybe, this new life won't be as grim as the rumors suggest. But then a neighbor shouts about the groom's drinking habits, and your heart sinks. Welcome to the medieval marriage game, where the stakes are high, and the wine is watered down. But the night still has something to teach you. You're back inside the cottage. The air is thick with the smell of boiled cabbage and smoke-soaked wool. The fire crackles weakly, painting the walls in restless light. You sit on a small stool, needle in hand, trying to mend a tear in your shift while your mother talks about tomorrow's wedding as if it's just another chore. But your mind drifts elsewhere, back to the deal that sealed your future before you even understood what marriage meant. You weren't chosen for love. You were traded for land. The gossip from the well still clings to your thoughts. Lucky girl, they said. He's got a temper and a wandering eye. You laughed it off earlier, but now the words sting, because deep down you know they might be right. In medieval times, marriages like yours were common, arranged when children were barely walking, meant to secure alliances or property. By the 14th century, the church insisted on consent, but no one asked if that consent came from the heart or from hunger. You're 16, maybe 17. The miller's son was chosen because his family owns the strip of land beside yours. It's not romance, it's logistics. Some betrothals had a little ceremony called hand fasting, where the couple would clasp hands through a stone to seal their promise. You didn't get that, but the weight on your chest feels heavy enough to count as stone. Historians still argue whether hand fasting was legal or just symbolic, but for you it's real either way. You're bound. You drop the needle, your fingers sore. Across the room, your younger sister sprawls on a pallet, half asleep, her world still simple. She's lucky. She has a few more years before her freedom becomes someone else's bargain. Your mother keeps talking. Something about how the miller's boy is sturdy enough. In other words, he's not dead yet. You almost laugh at the absurdity of it. If sturdy is the best they can say about him, you must be in for a thrilling marriage. You've barely spoken to the man. You remember him at the market once. Flour on his hands, saying nothing but a grunt in your direction. Hardly the stuff of love songs. The door creaks open. Your father stomps in, trailing mud and the smell of ale. His voice is low and gruff. He's been negotiating with the groom's family. And judging by his red face, it wasn't a peaceful discussion. That's how marriages are made here. Land for labor, chickens for reputation, survival traded like coin. You're not marrying a man, you're merging households. Your father mutters about the miller's stingy offer, and your stomach twists. If they can't get along now, what happens when the wedding's over and there's no one left to bargain but you? You step outside for air. The night is cool. Stars scattered like candle wax across the black sky. The village hums in the distance. Laughter from the alehouse, a dog barking, the clang of a hammer. Life doesn't stop for your worries. It just keeps grinding on. You've heard stories about brides who cried through their wedding nights, or the unlucky ones who never made it through childbirth a year later. You don't know which thought frightens you more, the night itself or the life that follows. Still, a faint smile tugs at your lips. Maybe if the groom drinks enough tomorrow, he'll just snore through the whole thing. Your mother's voice cuts through the night, sharp and commanding. She's standing by the doorway holding a wooden comb like a weapon. You sit by the fire again as she attacks the tangles in your hair with all the grace of a soldier. Maybe she thinks if she smooths your hair enough, the rest of your life will follow. The betrothal is settled. A few coins, a promise, and your labor. You're not gaining a husband. You're losing the last fragile thread of your own choice. The church might call this a sacred union. To you it feels like a contract written in someone else's hand. Tomorrow you'll walk to the church, and every pair of eyes will follow you. For now you're just a girl in a small cottage, staring into the fire and wondering when exactly you stopped being one. Maybe when they said speak now or forever hold your peace, you should have practiced saying no. But dawn has a habit of coming, whether you're ready or not. Dawn creeps through the shutters like a timid guest. The cottage smells of smoke and damp straw. You haven't slept much. The fire's died to a dull glow, and your mother is already awake, muttering about the dowie, that endless argument that's turned your wedding into a barter. You sit cross-legged on the floor, folding linens your mother insists must be part of the deal, while your father paces in circles, muttering about the miller's latest demands. It feels less like a marriage and more like a market day, where you happen to be the main item for sale. In medieval Europe, a dowry was the bride's contribution to the union. A blend of cloth, pots, livestock, and sometimes land or coin. By the 13th century, it had become the backbone of marriage negotiations, especially for families like yours, scraping by in villages where wealth meant an extra goat or two. Your dowry isn't grand. A few chickens, a patched blanket, and that wobbly stool your father carved last winter. He keeps boasting about it, as if craftsmanship can hide desperation. You can't help but smile at the absurdity of it. If your family's future rests on a crooked stool, God must have a sense of humor. A neighbor once said some dowries included bedding rights, where a groom was promised a share of the bride's household straw mattress. Luxury medieval style. Historians still argue whether dowries empowered women or turned them into bargaining chips. You don't need a scholar to tell you which side you're on. Your father's voice cuts through your thoughts. "Fold faster," he snaps. His frustration fills the tiny room, heavy as the smoke curling from the hearth. You glance down at the pile of linens, your hands moving automatically. Each piece feels like a fragment of your old life being traded away. The chickens, those silly clucking creatures that you've fed since you were a child, are part of it too. So is the blanket you and your mother wove one winter, so cold your fingers bled. You're not just giving things, you're giving memories. Outside, the village is waking up. You hear the creak of a cart, the bleating of a sheep, and the church bell tolling morning prayers. The world keeps moving while your fate hangs on a haggled deal. Your father slams his fist on the table, startling your little sister who's been dozing by the fire. He's furious again. The miller's family wants more. A share of your family's meadow, the only patch of land green enough to feed your cows. The room goes silent. You freeze, the pot slipping from your hand. That meadow is your family's lifeline. Without it, winter will be cruel. You're realizing this isn't just about marriage anymore. It's about survival. Your mother's voice trembles when she says, "We can't give them the meadow." But your father's eyes are dark and tired. "If we don't," he says, "there'll be no wedding." You force a laugh, though it sounds hollow. "If they're this picky about barley," you mutter. "I can only imagine how they'll judge my cooking." Your mother glares, but even she can't hide a small smile. Still, the truth lingers like smoke. These negotiations aren't about love or fairness. They're a test of power, and you're the prize being weighed. The chickens cluck nervously outside, unaware their fates tangled with yours. The sound almost makes you laugh again. Almost. Your father and mother keep arguing, their voices rising and falling like a bitter chant. You stare at the linens, wishing you could vanish into the weave. You're not part of this discussion, though you're the one it's all about. Through the window you glimpse the faint shimmer of the meadow in the morning sun. You know every inch of that field, where the buttercups grow, where the soil turns soft after rain. It's more than land. It's the last piece of home you can still claim. The thought stings. If this deal goes wrong, your family loses that too. And if it goes right, you lose yourself. You press your palms to the floor, the cold earth grounding you for a moment. Then you look up and see your parents' faces, drawn, exhausted, desperate, and the truth settles heavy in your chest. You're not just a bride-to-be. You're a bargaining chip in a game no one wins. Outside, the church bell tolls again, sharp and distant, reminding you that time doesn't wait for bargains. Tomorrow the vows will be spoken, the crowd will cheer, and your life will belong to someone else. You pick up the last folded linen and whisper, "Let's hope he's worth at least a meadow." But somewhere deep down, you already know, no field is fertile enough to grow freedom. Morning comes softly, carrying the smell of damp earth and wood smoke. Your mother's already bustling about, her sleeves rolled to the elbows, muttering about time and cleanliness. The dowry haggling from last night, that fight over the meadow, still lingers in the air like ash after a fire. But there's no time left to dwell. Today is the wedding. You're standing behind a flimsy screen of woven branches, your mother dragging a tub of lukewarm water toward you. The ground beneath your bare feet is slick with mud, and a faint mist clings to the morning air. You're shivering, not from cold alone, but from the weight of what's coming. Your mother scrubs your arms with a coarse cloth, her movements brisk, almost military. You wince but say nothing. This isn't about comfort, it's about making you presentable. In medieval Europe, bridal preparations were practical, not romantic. There were no scented oils, no candle-lit baths. By the 14th century, a bride was expected to appear modest, clean, and respectable, a walking reflection of her family's dignity. You're not being pampered. You're being polished for public display. Your mother tuts at your hair, muttering that you should have taken better care of it. The water smells faintly of iron, drawn from the same well where the village gossips whispered yesterday. You close your eyes, pretending the rough cloth is gentle. Somewhere nearby a rooster crows, followed by laughter from the road. The village is awake, and the world feels like it's leaning in, waiting to watch. A curious superstition flickers in your mind. Some villagers believed washing a bride's feet brought fertility. Your mother seems to share that belief, because she splashes water on your toes with alarming enthusiasm. You try not to laugh, but the absurdity of it nearly breaks you. When she's satisfied, she hands you a dress, a faded blue hand-me-down from your cousin's wedding. The wool is heavy, stiff, and slightly itchy, but it's the best your family can offer. You slip it on carefully, the fabric cold against your skin. You glance at your reflection in a polished copper plate propped against a stool. The face staring back doesn't feel like yours, and pale, uncertain, a stranger wearing your fear. You exhale slowly and manage a half-smile. If this is bridal glow, you think, you're ready to glow right back to bed. Your mother begins weaving a crown of wildflowers into your hair. The stems prick your scalp and petals brush your forehead. To ward off evil spirits, she says, though you suspect it's more about making you look less nervous. Your younger sister giggles nearby. You look like one of those saints from the church fresco, she teases. You roll your eyes but can't help smiling. If saints had to wear this dress, you whisper, they'd have rebelled ages ago. Your mother steps back to inspect her work, her eyes soft for the first time today. She adjusts the flowers, then hands you a pair of worn leather shoes. They pinch your feet the moment you put them on. But walking barefoot to the church would be bad luck, and heaven knows you've had enough of that. Outside, the sounds of the village grow louder. Carts creaking, children chasing dogs, a distant fiddle warming up for the feast. Your heart beats faster. This isn't just a ceremony, it's a spectacle, one that belongs more to them than to you. You can already hear the whispers through the thin walls. She looks pretty enough. Hope she's tougher than she seems. You clench your fists, your nails pressing into your palms. You'd rather face a battlefield than this chorus of judgment. Your mother gives your hand a squeeze, her eyes suddenly serious. Keep your head down, she warns. Don't trip on the church steps. And whatever you do, don't talk back to the priest. You nod, though your thoughts drift elsewhere, to the groom you haven't seen since the feast. Is he kind? Is he sober? Does he even want this? The uncertainty gnaws at you worse than the shoes. You glance down at your dress, its hem already dusted with dirt, and let out a breath that's half sigh, half laugh. Maybe if I scrub hard enough, you think, I could wash the whole wedding away. Your mother doesn't hear. She's too busy straightening your sleeves, fussing over every fold. You let her, because deep down you know this is her way of saying goodbye. Somewhere beyond the cottage, the church bells begin to ring, cut low and solemn, calling the village to witness your fate. You take one last look around the little room where you've lived your whole life. The cracked walls, the smoky hearth. The bells have barely stopped where the ringing goat once chewed when the crowd begins to gather, and feel the quiet ache. By the time you and the miller's son step out of the small stone church, the air is damp and cold. The air outside is thick. The sky smell of roasted meat and spilled ale. Villagers turn their heads. The whole village seems to have shown up. Whispers rising, farmers like with mud still on their boots. You walk slower. Children with flowers in their hair. Each step a farewell. And a few goats who the bells keep invited but came anyway. And with each toll you realize you stand beside your new husband. There's no turning back. Hands clasped awkwardly. But sometimes stiff even the longest walk begins with one trembling breath, shoulders broad from lifting sacks of grain. His eyes are kind enough, or maybe just distracted. It's hard to tell under all this noise. Someone thrusts a mug of watered wine into your hands before you can even blink. Another voice shouts, "A toast!" to the bride and groom. The cheer that follows shakes the air, and before you know it, you're smiling, because everyone expects you to. The feast stretches across the village square. Long wooden tables are piled with bread, cheese, and stewed onions. Children chase each other between benches. Dogs dart underfoot. And the fiddler, and already half drunk, plays something that sounds like a tune but might just be enthusiasm. In medieval villages, weddings were as much about the community as the couple. Food was shared, ale flowed freely, and gossip was served in equal measure. By the 14th century, even the poorest peasants managed a small celebration. A day to forget hunger, debts, and the endless turn of the plough. You breathe in the smell of roasted goose and wood smoke, the taste of yeast and sour wine on your tongue. For a brief moment, the chaos almost feels alive. Warm, human, forgiving. Then someone shouts a joke about the wedding night, and laughter ripples through the crowd. You glance down, cheeks burning, pretending not to hear. Your husband laughs too loudly. You tell yourself it's just the drink. The blacksmith claps him on the back, roaring, "Don't wear yourself out too early, lad." Another round of laughter. You roll your eyes, forcing a smile. Ah, you think, nothing says romance like half the village betting on your bedtime. Your mother tries to rescue you by piling food onto your plate, a silent act of love disguised as distraction. The goose is overcooked, the bread too hard, but you chew anyway. Eating feels safer than talking. You glance at your father across the table. He's red-faced and loud, arguing about the harvest with the miller. Their tones are sharp, but the words blur together in the drunken hum. You can tell both men are pretending this day is easier than it really is. Your sister, sitting beside you, keeps sneaking sips of ale and giggling behind her hand. "You look like a saint," she whispers. "A very nervous one." You bump her knee under the table. "And you look like a bad influence," you reply. Somewhere behind you, an old woman begins singing, a coarse ballad about love and bad luck. The crowd joins in, voices rising, mugs clinking, feet stamping on the dirt. The rhythm swells, messy and joyful, until even you start to tap along. For a heartbeat, you forget the fear. You laugh, really laugh, at the drunken fiddler tripping over his own bow, at the children stealing bits of bread, at the goat eating someone's wreath. It feels almost human again. Historians say peasants' weddings were among the few times people could indulge in unrestrained joy. For one day, even the poorest could feel rich, not in coin, but in company. Maybe that's what you're feeling now, not peace, but something close to belonging. Then the fiddler shifts tune and the laughter softens. Someone begins a slow dance, couples stepping into the open space near the fire pit. The crowd starts cheering again. The bride! The groom! You hesitate, but your husband takes your hand. His grip is firm, his palm warm from ale and firelight. You let him lead you to the clearing. The music sways, clumsy but tender. You step carefully, your shoes pinching, your heart pounding. The villagers clap in rhythm, shouting encouragement and teasing remarks. For a few turns, it almost feels like a story worth believing in. Your husband leans closer, whispering something you can't quite catch over the noise. His breath smells of bread and beer. You nod anyway, pretending you understood. It's easier that way. The dance ends with applause and whistles. Someone hands you another mug. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose. The air smells of smoke and laughter. For a moment, the world feels soft around the edges, and yet deep inside, something uneasy stirs. A quiet reminder that joy here is borrowed. never owned. You look at your new husband, laughing with the men near the fire, his face glowing in the light. The music is still echoing. You wonder if he's laughing. Someone shouts, or it's time. The thought passes as quickly as it came, but it leaves a chill. But then the laughter changes. The sky deepens. The rhythm of the night shifts. The songs grow louder. The crowd begins to chant. And somewhere beyond the laughter, familiar sound the priest's warning about since you were a child. The bedding ceremony is a holy freeze until death. It's not just an old rumor. You sit from your cup. The villagers are already lighting torches with the first trace of light, like mischievous stars. But the feast was only around you and your husband. The night still smells of ale and smoke and something else. Anticipation, thick and sour. Your mother appears beside you, her expression half forced pride, half apology. She adjusts your flower crown one last time, whispering, "It will be over quickly." You're not sure if she's talking about the ceremony or the life that follows. Someone grabs your husband by the arm, laughing, pulling him toward the cottage. He doesn't resist. His grin is broad, flushed with drink and attention. You wonder if he even realizes how pale you've gone. In medieval villages, the bedding ceremony was part custom, part comedy. It was supposed to prove fertility, bless the union, and give the community a reason to drink even more. The newlyweds were escorted to their bed, while the guests sang, joked, and sometimes even threw bits of grain or fruit for good luck. Tonight, luck feels like a cruel word. You're surrounded, faces glowing in the firelight, eyes gleaming with mischief. Someone starts singing a bawdy verse about love and patience. The crowd howls with laughter. You keep your head down, clutching your skirt, feeling your heartbeat in your throat. A group of women, your neighbors, your mother's friends, usher you forward, their hands firm, but not unkind. They chatter endlessly, trying to mask your dread with jokes. "Don't worry, love," one says. "Men are clumsy creatures. You'll survive," another snorts. "If he's half as bad as his father, you'll sleep just fine." The laughter that follows is sharp, but it keeps the fear at bay. Inside the cottage, the air is close and hot. Candles flicker on the table, throwing restless shadows across the straw mattress in the corner. Someone's already scattered petals on it, as if that might make the whole thing softer. Your husband stumbles in behind you, still smiling, though his steps are unsteady. You can smell the ale on him, sweet and sharp. He doesn't say much, just glances at the crowd, soaking in their cheers. Then the room fills with a strange ritualistic energy. The women surround you, tugging at the laces of your gown, removing your crown, your veil, layer by layer, until you're left in the thin linen shift that clings to your skin. You're trying to breathe to steady your shaking hands. You remind yourself, this is custom, this is history. This is what every bride before you endured. Outside, someone shouts a final toast. The men pound on the walls, their laughter muffled but relentless. Your husband looks at you for the first time that night. Really looks, and for a heartbeat you see confusion flicker across his face. Maybe even tenderness, but it's hard to tell. The women pull the blanket over the bed, murmuring blessings. One of them pats your shoulder. "Be brave," she says softly, her eyes kind but tired, the kind of tired that comes from remembering her own night long ago. The door closes. The laughter outside drifts away. Silence settles like dust. The candles flicker lower and the cottage feels impossibly small. You hear your own breath, quick and uneven. The crackle of the fire. The faint hum of the night beyond the walls. He sits on the edge of the bed, awkward, unsure. The grand celebration stripped away to this. Two strangers caught between duty and expectation. You glance toward the shuttered window. Beyond it, the village still feasts, oblivious. They'll be telling jokes about this moment for days. But for you, this isn't a story. It's the beginning of everything that will define you. You don't know whether to laugh, cry, or run. Instead, you sit very still, listening to your heartbeat as it echoes through the silence. Some historians say the bedding ceremony symbolized fertility. Others claim it was just theater, a ritual to appease the church and the neighbors. But you know better. It's neither blessing nor spectacle. It's surrender disguised as celebration. The roosters cry, the candles gutter out one by one until only the firelight remains. For a few seconds you don't move. Low, red, you lie still, staring at the wooden beams above your skin, listening to the creak of the cottage as it turns toward you, his voice rough with nerves. The fire has long died. Try to sleep, smells of ash and sweat and wilted flowers. Not because you agree, your head aches, but because words are useless now. Your body feels like a stranger's. The noise outside, fragments of last night flicker through your mind. It's laughter outside the door, but silence has a way of revealing candles fading one by one. And now silence. You reach across the bed. He's gone. Outside, muffled voices drift through the window. Men laughing, someone whistling, someone calling your husband's name. The sound feels wrong, too cheerful for a morning like this. You sit up slowly, pulling the blanket around your shoulders. The sheet beneath you is plain and pale, untouched. Your breath catches. You stare at it for a long moment, your pulse loud in your ears. You already know what that means. In your village, the morning after isn't private. It's proof. Some brides display the bed sheets proudly, a bloodstain for honor. Others aren't so lucky. The absence of color can turn to the color of shame. The door creaks open. Your mother steps inside quietly, eyes red from sleeplessness. She doesn't look at you, just at the bed. A heartbeat passes, then another. She folds the sheet with trembling hands and whispers, "Say nothing." Not to anyone, you nod, though your throat burns. Words feel dangerous now, sharp enough to cut what little safety you have left. She leaves without another glance. You pour cold water from a clay jug and splash your face. The reflection in the bowl startles you. Your eyes older, your mouth set, your skin pale as wax. For a moment you don't recognize the person staring back. Outside, laughter rises again. You hear his voice, light, careless, as if nothing ever happened. Maybe he's lying about you. Maybe he's not. Either way, your name now belongs to the mouths of others. You touch your face, tracing the unfamiliar lines, and whisper to your reflection, "It's over." But deep down, you know the truth. It's not over. It's only begun. You take a breath, wrap the shawl tighter, and look toward the door. The world is waiting outside, and you don't feel ready to step into it. But readiness has never been part of survival, because sometimes the morning after doesn't bring light. It brings clarity. By midday, the whole village knows. They don't say it directly, and they never do, but you see it in their eyes. The baker's wife smiles too sweetly. The blacksmith's daughter avoids your gaze. The priest greets you with that polite, pitying tone reserved for the condemned. The air feels heavier now. Even the sunlight has turned cruel. You try to lose yourself in chores, sweeping, fetching water, feeding chickens that refuse to eat. But every sound outside carries a whisper. Maybe she's barren. Maybe he's weak. Maybe the marriage isn't blessed. In your world, reputation is survival. And yours, barely a day old, already teeters. Your husband avoids the cottage until nightfall. When he finally returns, his steps are slow, his face unreadable. He doesn't speak much, just eats his supper in silence and stares at the fire. You want to ask if he told anyone, but the words stick in your throat. Historians say most peasant marriages were built on endurance, not affection. People learn to share roofs before they learn to share hearts. Maybe that's what you'll have to do too. Endure until you disappear into routine. Still, something in you resists. A small stubborn ember that refuses to die. You start writing thoughts on scraps of old parchment, tucked beneath your mattress. Words you'll never read aloud, but that keep you alive inside. "I was here," you write one night. Even if no one remembers, you don't know it yet. But that quiet act of defiance, claiming your own story, will be the one thing they can't trade away. Because even in the smallest life, there's a voice waiting to be heard. A week later, you walk to the river alone. The sky is low and grey, the kind that promises rain without hurry. The path is slick with mud, the air heavy with the scent of wet grass. You kneel by the water, hands trembling, and watch your reflection waver with the ripples. For a long time you say nothing. Then, softly, you whisper, "What now?" The river doesn't answer, but it listens. the way only rivers do. You tell it everything, the wedding, the fear, the silence, the whispers. The words spill out like water itself, endless cleansing. When you're done, you sit back lighter somehow. The world hasn't changed, but you have. In the distance, the church bell rings again. Not for you this time, but for someone else. Maybe another wedding, maybe a funeral. You wonder if the two are really so different. The wind picks up, tugging at your veil, and for a moment you let it go. The thin fabric catches in the current, floating downstream like a ghost of the girl you used to be. You watch it disappear until the last glimmer of white fades into the grey. And for the first time in days, you smile because maybe freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just drifts quietly downstream. Months pass, your hands grow rougher, your back stronger. The gossip fades, replaced by the steady rhythm of daily survival. You learn the ways of the mill, the timing of the grain, the patience of the wheel that never stops turning. Your husband speaks more kindly now. In small ways, a shared loaf, a word of thanks, a rare moment of laughter when the cat steals from the stew. It's not love, not yet, but it's something close to understanding. Historians often wrote about women of your time as silent figures, nameless wives, forgotten daughters. But you know better. You've learned silence isn't the absence of power. It's where endurance lives. One evening you stand by the door watching the sunset spill across the fields. The same meadow your family once nearly lost now glows gold with harvest. The wind carries the scent of grain and the faint hum of peace. Your husband joins you there. Neither of you speaks. But for the first time, it doesn't feel like distance. It feels like space. You think of all that's been taken from you, and all that remains. Strength, stillness, the stubborn will to keep standing when everything else falls. You touch the worn wood of the doorway and whisper, "This is my life." And this time it doesn't sound like defeat, because sometimes survival itself is a kind of rebellion. Years pass. Seasons fold into each other like pages turned too fast. The girl who once trembled at the altar has vanished, but her voice still lingers, softer, wiser, unbroken. You sit outside the cottage one evening, the air thick with the smell of bread and rain. Children's laughter drifts from somewhere nearby, not yours but familiar, belonging to the life that grew around you. Your husband's hair is turning grey. His hands, once rough and restless, now move with gentler purpose. You've both outlived the gossip, the judgment, the noise. What remains is quiet, not empty but earned. You sometimes walk to the river still. The current never stops. It hums the same patient song it sang the day you let your veil go. You kneel beside it, close your eyes and listen. You think of all the women who came before you, the nameless ones, the forgotten ones, the ones whose stories dissolved into silence. Maybe they're here too, carried in the water, whispering through the reeds. You smile, because you've kept the light alive, not through grandeur but through persistence, through staying, through being. And as the sun sets low over the meadow, painting the world in gold once more, you whisper one last line, not to anyone, but to the air itself. Maybe that's all any of us are trying to do, to keep the light alive, one quiet breath at a time.